Romeo Music is the leader in audio, video, music, and lighting technology for educators. With a combined nearly 200 years of experience, Romeo Music's subject matter experts understand the struggles that face teachers in today's music classrooms. With a laser focus on educational technology, Romeo Music provides a turnkey solution, everything from audio cables to on-site training. To learn more, visit www.romeomusic.net.
Hello, and welcome to Bandstand, the official podcast of the Tennessee Bandmasters Association. I'm your host, David Adelit, and I hope you'll join us on a journey through the past, present, and future of bands in Tennessee. We'll delve into the rich history of Tennessee bands, uncovering the hidden gems and legendary figures who shaped the state's band landscape. We'll survey the present, where you'll meet the movers and shakers of today, gaining insights from their expertise and experiences. And we'll gaze towards the future, exploring the exciting possibilities that await Tennessee's school bands.
Hello, this is Rick Murphy, and this is Joanne Hood's and my nomination narrative on behalf of Nola Jones' inclusion into the TBA Hall of Fame. We all know one or two people in our profession that possess a magnetic personality, that certain je ne sais quoi that lights up any room they're in, the person who everyone seeks out for the right answer, the right technique, the right way to say it, the person who can cheer you up when you're down or be your boldest cheerleader when you're riding high. Our nominee today for the Tennessee Bandmasters Association Hall of Fame is exactly that person and more. Our nominee is known by everyone in this room, and their influence and personality in music education is known throughout our state, the South, the United States, and yes, around the world. Our nominee is comfortable and proficient on the concert stage, the marching field, the basketball arena, and the academic and corporate boardroom. Our nominee has conducted some of the finest wind bands in our country and adjudicates at the highest levels of our art. Our nominee today is Dr. Nola Jones. Nola is a native of the Magnolia State and the daughter of Ann and Jim Scott, two exceptional Mississippi bandmasters. Ann is fond of saying Nola's first memory must be a trombone slide passing over her cradle as a student warmed up for a lesson with her dad, and also giggled at the numerous pictures of Nola and her very talented sister Molly in diapers at band camp. Nola is always quick to credit any professional honors to the example set by both her beloved parents. As a young, exceptional clarinetist, Nola distinguished herself by making the Mississippi Lions Band, that state's equivalent to the Allstate Band. She received the Bachelor of Music Education degree from Mississippi State University and her Master of Music Education degree from Mississippi College. She began her teaching career at the Heritage Academy in Columbus, where she implemented the first band program in the school's history, recruiting over 100 beginning band students that first year. Her next 10 years saw her teaching at 3 public schools in Mississippi: McGee, Clinton, and Pearl, with each taking her to larger band programs with more students and more resources. Her last band job in Mississippi was at Pearl High School, which was widely regarded at that time, and still is, as one of the best band programs in the state. 1991 saw her move to Nashville, where she joined the band faculty at McGavock High School and DuPont Tyler Middle School. During her 6 years at McGavock, the band received the John Philip Sousa Sudler Shield, was named regional champions 3 consecutive years at the Bands of America Atlanta Regional, was awarded the Tennessee Governor's Cup 3 times, and performed in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. In 1997, Nola moved to downtown Nashville to serve as director of bands at Martin Luther King Magnet School. The band grew from 45 members to over 250 members during her tenure, receiving superior ratings in concert and sight rating with every ensemble, and band members were selected for the All-State Band for the first time in the school's history. 2002 saw a change in her life's progression, a journey into higher education at the University of South Carolina to pursue a doctorate in musical arts, where her mentor was Dr. William J. Moody. Upon completion of her doctoral coursework, Dr. Jones accepted the position as Associate Director of Bands and Assistant Professor of Music Education at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, where she increased student participation in the marching band program by 50% in 3 years. In 2006, she packed her bags and returned to her adopted home of Tennessee to become Director of Bands at the University of Tennessee at Martin. While at Martin, she once again increased student participation in the marching band program by 50%, secured an additional $500,000 in funding for scholarships and equipment, and received tenure promotion to the associate professor rank. After 6 years in Martin, Dr. Jones longed for the gentle rolling hills of Middle Tennessee. So she moved back to Nashville to take on an arduous job as coordinator, Director of Visual and Performing Arts for Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools, working closely with 400 professional arts education specialists in music, theater, visual art, and dance. Staying busy with instructional supervision, curriculum planning, and professional development, she somehow found time to create and implement a strategic program for Music Makes Us, a unique public-private partnership in Metro Nashville public schools. During her tenure, she secured over $12 million in grant support from organizations including the Country Music Association, the National Endowment for the Arts, the NAM Foundation, the Recording Academy, Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, Save the Music Foundation, Big Machine Records, and Little Kids Rock. With her guidance, Nashville was listed as one of the best communities for music education, a designation by the NAM Foundation in 2015, 2016, and 2017. Dr. Jones' exemplary leadership in Metro Nashville caught the attention of those in Elkhart, Indiana, and she took on another huge leadership position as Director of Educational Programs for Conn-Selmer. Quite the busy bee, she created the curriculum for the Conn-Selmer Institute, including 6 tracks of content, and actively secured the professional faculty to deliver said content. Sadly, COVID struck, but it didn't stop Dr. Jones. She implemented the first virtual Conn-Selmer Institute, engaging over 2,000 music educators worldwide, while expanding and diversifying Conn-Selmer's educational clinician roster. In Nola's spare time, she has been judge, team member, and summer symposium track leader for the past 23 years for Music for All, Bands of America, where she serves as an active clinician and adjudicator, assists in judging assignments for regional and national championships, provides leadership in policy and educational philosophy, and assists in the educational training materials and delivery for Bands of America judging panels. But wait, there is more. For the past 12 years, Nola has served as the judge liaison for Drum Corps International, where she not only judges, but is responsible for the training of new music and visual judges and assists in assigning judging panels for regional and world championship competitions. She is also responsible for assigning judging panels for several individual state marching championships. Dr. Nola Jones is a lifelong music educator who has garnered a national reputation as a devoted and effective leader in music education. She maintains an active schedule as a conductor, clinician, adjudicator, keynote speaker, and program evaluator. She has appeared in 43 states and internationally in Canada, Japan, the Netherlands, and Singapore. She has been a featured presenter at the Midwest Clinic, NAM Foundation, and VH1 Save the Music Foundation. She has directed the United States Army All-America Marching Band and facilitated the NAFME Collegiate Advocacy Summit. She participated in the Yale Symposium on Music in Schools, contributing to the Declaration on Equity in Music for City Students. She holds memberships in a plethora of professional music affiliations and associations where she has served in multiple capacities. Dr. Nola Jones has had a stellar career in music, and every time she boards a plane at Nashville International Airport to fly to yet another clinic opportunity, state, national, or international conference, or judging assignment, she proudly represents her home of Nashville and her state of Tennessee. Her focus as an educator has always been squarely on the needs of the student, and her ensembles in public schools and universities have, without exception, grown in size and musicianship. Her focus as an administrative leader has always been centered on the organic improvement and enhancement of the teacher in the classroom, always promoting musical artistry every step of the way. Her magnetic personality, her southern charm, has helped shape and forge a perfectly splendid association with everyone she meets. Her influence and mentorship on thousands of high school students, university students, and professional colleagues is immeasurable. Her consistent promotion and advancement of music programs throughout the country, including all of ours, has been profoundly noteworthy. And for these reasons, Joanne Hood and I are honored and most pleased to nominate Dr. Nola Jones for inclusion into the Tennessee Bandmasters Association Hall of Fame.
We're joined today by Joanne Hood and Rick Murphy, two of our TBA Hall of Fame members, and Dr. Nola Jones, who, along with Ron Rogers, will be inducted into the Tennessee Bandmasters Hall of Fame next month at the TBA conference. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We thought we might do 2 episodes, one for each of our new inductees, just to give some more personal context to the induction process. Both of you get to speak at the concert, and of course, last April when you were nominated, there was a presentation about you and your career. But just to make it a little bit more personal for both you and Ron, Nola, is our goal here. So my first question is, Rick and Joanne, can you just take a second and talk about the process that you go through to nominate somebody for this?
Well,
you first, Joanne.
You contact Michael Rawson, the committee, and Jacob Compost, and then you just submit that, and then we have to submit bios and pictures and information like that.
Like about their career, like justification for why they should be in?
And what they've done and that kind of thing. Why you want to know.
Even before that, though, Joanne and I had talked about it for about a year before we actually did it, because we were trying to get all of our ducks in a row and finding out all we could about Nola and trying to get her vita, her resume, in the chronological order so that it made sense. And then, like Joanne said, we contacted the committee, and then we had to actually write something up about it. And Joanne and I write like a story instead of just a bio. And so that was kind of fun. Then we had to get Nola to get us a picture. And then we presented at the meeting, and hopefully they'll say, the membership will say yes.
And they did. It was unanimous.
And there was no chance that there was no chance they were going to say no. Do you remember the first time you met Nola?
I do.
Vaguely, yeah. It seems like I've known her all my life. So
I think I first met her at some marching contest somewhere.
That's what I was going to say. Probably a marching contest, right there.
Maybe the contest was over, and maybe Jeff Beckman or somebody said, "Hey, you need to meet Nola Jones, who just got hired at McGavitt." And so I went down there and met Nola. I didn't know her at all. She seemed to know a lot about me, though, but I think that's where it started.
I think so, too.
Joanne, I don't remember when I met you. It just seems like I've known you my whole life. I'll get into that in a little bit about Joanne being one of the reasons that I really wanted to move to Nashville. It's so ironic, David, that these two people that we're on this call with were two of the biggest reasons that I uprooted my life and moved to Nashville and didn't know a soul. but I knew about these two people. I did my homework, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I do remember teasing Rick the first time I met him. I curtsied and asked if I could kiss his ring because he was obviously.
I remember something like that.
Yeah. And then our friendship was formed right then and there.
Yes.
Because I had respected his work from afar for a long, long time, and you know, felt the responsibility of coming to McGavock as part of his legacy, and felt a real deep desire to not let that diminish while I was part of that program. It was really important. It was important to all of us.
And was that 1990 or 1991?
Oh gosh, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. Don't ask me. It would have been early in the 90s, and it was it was whatever the Disney year was my first year there. Oh no, the Christmas year.
Okay,
Christmas
that was 90. Okay,
Well,
Disney was 92.
knows all that
91.
trivia.
Well,
Yes.
she's talking about Disney Part 2.
Part 2, yeah. But the Christmas year was the first year that I was at McGavock.
So, Nola, just briefly, maybe this is not the order you want to do this in, but what does this mean to you?
Oh, you're gonna make my eyes leak before we even get into this thing, right? Thanks a lot.
That's the goal.
It's the highest honor of my life, David. It really is, and I'm just so touched that my peers would feel like I would even be remotely worthy for consideration of this honor. Because all I ever wanted to be was a good band director. And my parents were both band directors. My mom didn't live long enough for the announcement, but I guess she and Joanne had talked and she knew that something was coming specifically. And I feel like that she'll be there with us in spirit in April. Both my sisters are flying in. My whole family and my whole chosen family will be there. And it is indeed the highest honor, because the recognition by your peers when all you've ever wanted to be is just like them, there's nothing more gratifying.
Rick and Joanne, I know you had to write a narrative that was presented at the TBA meeting last April. Do you remember, and you probably don't have that laying in front of you, do you remember what was on that? Can you just talk through some of those highlights you might recall?
Well, it basically tells her life story, where, because she was born into band director royalty. And so it just traced her career from her beginnings in Mississippi and all of her academic stuff. And then that's about a third of it. And the second third of it would have been the amount of work and the amount of notoriety she's brought to the state through her work in all of the different organizations she's a part of. And I think that's one of Nola's big attractions, is that she continually brings attention to the state of Tennessee. Every time she's going anywhere, and everything she does, it's national or international in scope, because she flies across the pond all the time. So that was about the second part of it. And then the last part of it was just what she means to us and to the band programs in Tennessee, because of course anyone that knows Nola loves Nola and feels like she's part of Nola's closest friends, because when you're in Nola's orbit, you just feel like, yeah, she's like the sun, and she just warms you up, and everybody feels very comfortable around her, and she's just a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame. Some people might have said, well, she didn't teach long enough in Tennessee, but Joanne and I thought she's brought more notoriety to our state than almost anybody in the Hall of Fame, really, because she's involved in every aspect. She does things on the concert stage. She's, of course, marching events everywhere. And then she's in the educational, in the pedagogy side. And all the time, she's always doing professional developments for educational groups and flying all over the country, doing all those things that Nola does. And everybody loves her.
Yeah, I mean, she's taught all of us.
Absolutely.
She's taught,
yes,
so many students and impacted so many students, but the impact on adults is, that's the ripples of that extend way far across this thing that we're doing
Well,
here.
sure. And she still teaches now. Just last weekend we were in New York City in Carnegie Hall hearing the Vienna Philharmonic, and she was teaching me stuff there. Yeah, I like her vocabulary.
Yes.
You all
She's
humble
like a
me.
walking SAT thesaurus.
And she's
You
genuine
all
in
humble
everything she
me.
does.
This is hard to listen to, David. It's real hard to listen to. I don't.
People are
Well,
going
I
to
just
love it.
don't think of myself that way. I just think of myself as a teacher and a product of my parents. And Mama used to laugh and say the first memory that I had was of a trombone slide going over my cradle, and there was always a lesson, and there was always somebody else warming up and somebody out in the driveway in the car waiting to be the next one on deck. And it was just what we did in our house. And most people, when they came home, they had to do their homework before they could go out and play. Our rule was you have to practice 30 minutes before you can go out and play. That's just what we do here. And so it's just who we are. And so it's very difficult to listen to. And when they were reading all that stuff, my first thought was, dang, I'm old. I had no idea I did all that. It's just doing what we do. And part of it is paying it forward. Like all the mentors, if we look at the mentors that we have, they were paying forward when Gary Cook used to drive from Vicksburg, Mississippi and meet me halfway between Clinton and Vicksburg at this little truck stop and help me study my 9th grade band recordings so that I could know what to tell my students the next day to get them ready for CPA. Or Mickey Grove used to drive up the Natchez Trace and meet my mother to help her plan her marching band show. Or Bill Braden would drive, or Elva Kay would, or David Wilson, or all those people would do the things they would do. We all have those people that when you first start teaching, they help you survive, and then you hopefully learn to thrive. And then the third stage of that, the third leg of that stool is paying it forward, so that this tradition of music education and success, however we label that, continues.
If you know Nola's family, and especially her mom, most people probably don't remember her father. I remember him because when he retired, he sold pizzas, and he came to Nashville, and John Overton Band came out and fed us all pizzas. We sold pizzas with him, and he was just a hoot. But her mom was around a long time, and she kind of became my second mother, and just I always said I was her adopted daughter. But if you know all of those people, you know why Nola is like she is.
So Nola, it's at the conference last year. It's the TBA meeting. What did it feel like when you found out?
Well, first I had to get there. I was late to the meeting, David, because I was meeting with the teacher who was in distress. We were downstairs. I was meeting with a teacher who was literally in tears about their job. And I couldn't find a way to extricate myself from that conversation because this teacher was literally in tears. And I don't know how you hugging somebody, telling them you'll be there to help them and you'll get them help and don't worry and it's going to be okay and we got you. Thanks for trusting me to help and everything. And then by the time it was time for me to run upstairs, it was all the way on the other side of the ballroom where I thought I was going, where it was last year. They had moved it. So Rawson's texting me, Joanne's yelling over text. I'm trying to get there. And then I rounded the corner and there was a seat right there. And I sat down and Rick stood up and started talking. And I didn't know anything about what this was going to be. I knew it was something. I thought it was just like a certificate or something. I had no idea it was a Hall of Fame, none at all. So it just took me from, I was just so worried about this teacher and just in really, really concerned and feeling so low. How can this wonderful teacher be where this person is right now? How does this even happen? To just the top of the mountain that maybe there is hope and gave me the energy and the strength to keep on keeping on. This is the why of what we do. So it was, they say things happen, timing is everything. And it just meant so much. And of course, y'all probably know that we lost Mom about two weeks before the conference last year. So I was I was still reeling from the loss, and this month is the anniversary of her passing, and so I was still kind of real. Well, not kind of. I was very raw from that. So I was dealing with that, and she loved Joanne more than once. She threatened to cut me out of the will and put Joanne in instead. And she would have said the same thing about Rick. She just didn't know Rick as quite as well. But I just felt her presence. She and Daddy were both there, and I'm so touched.
So, Nola, what have been your compass points throughout this illustrious career, your guiding values and that sort of thing?
David, that's a really interesting question, and I don't know how everybody else would answer it, but I was fortunate enough, again, I just keep going back to my family and my upbringing. And what my parents always taught us from day one, and they taught, probably most of their students would tell you the same thing. And that was, you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to work hard enough. You can accomplish, if you visualize and and manifest it, you can make it happen. So when I was interviewing for that first teaching job, and I had to interview for 14 jobs before I got the first job offer, it never occurred to me that the reason I wasn't getting that job was because I looked 12 years old and I was 5 feet tall, and I was interviewing for football coaches who were now principals in the middle of Mississippi, and that there were some other reasons besides the fact that there would be somebody more experienced or more appropriate for that position. And I just kept applying for them. And after that first job, I never had to really interview for another one. They always came to me. And it just, that was just what they taught us. And interestingly, Mom hired Dad to play in a pickup band for her in Newport, Mississippi. And Daddy was a drummer, and she hired him to play. It's a long story about what she was doing, but that was pretty radical in the 50s for a woman to be traveling the South, hiring pickup bands and doing these cabaret type shows as part of the chambers of commerce of these small towns. They would have think county fair type things. And so 2 weeks later, after they met, he proposed to her. She told him he was crazy. And the month after that, they were married on a train going to Chicago to get him into school at Northwestern because he wanted to be a band director. And she said, well, if you want to be a band director, then we have to go to the best school in the country. And he had never had a theory class. He couldn't pass the diagnostics. She convinced the people at Northwestern to give her a month to tutor him, that he had perfect pitch and he could learn everything he needed to learn to be ready if they would just trust her. And so he retook the diagnostics a month later and shot the top out of everything. And John Painter was his first band director at Northwestern. And then 4 years later, they were back in Mississippi teaching. And they just had this career that they did together for almost 60 years. And so we just grew up in a house where you just did it. And it didn't occur to me when I came to Nashville and moved to McGavock. I look back on it and think, you were either naive or stupid or both. But, you just didn't. That's the one thing that they taught us, that whatever you decide you want to do it, and then make it manifest itself. And the other thing was that teaching band is a noble profession. You're not going to ever get rich, but the value add that we add to people's lives, and the importance of music and what it does to people's lives, for people, for humanity, is noble, and never to second guess that.
Nola's too polite to say, at her very heart, she's a giver. That's just what she does. She gives and gives and gives. And not everybody's like that.
Thank you.
Most definitely. Now, I mean, that just sums it up. She's Nola. And there's nothing else to say. She's Nola.
No, she's up there with Madonna or anybody else that's gone to just the one name recognition. Okay, so let's do a little timeline. You were in Mississippi. You moved to Nashville to be at McGavock in the early 90s. Then you went to MLK in the mid 90s. I remember the impact of that, because I remember you went from about, what was the original number of kids you had at MLK?
I think it was somewhere between 40 and 50, 7 through 12.
And 7 minutes later, you had 350 or something like that, wasn't it?
Well, we kind of laid the groundwork for that program to grow because we knew they needed a great band program there. And Dr. Safel Smith, who was at Two Rivers Middle School when I was at McGavock, called me about coming over to MLK, and we had a very serious conversation because at the time, Hume Fogg was heavily into the jazz idiom, and I wanted to be sure she knew that that was not my forte. I could do that and we could have a jazz band, but it wouldn't be the centerpiece of the program. And if that was what she wanted, that I was not her person. I loved her and I would never want to have gone in there and let her down. The only thing worse than not taking that job would have been to, not do a good job for the students and what their expect. That's another thing we can talk about. When you interview for a job, it's really important that you understand what their expectations for the band program. What does that school, what does the community need? You're interviewing them as much as they are you, because if it's not a good fit, you don't want to be there. You can't do a great job for them. So she invited me to come there, and I kind of laid the groundwork that we're, a year from now, this conversation is going to be different because I'm going to be asking you for some help because we're not going to be able to staff this with the number of students we're going to have. And I started a beginner band during my lunch period. She thought I was crazy. I said, I don't need lunch. I can deal with that later. Let me do beginning band. And that's where we started. Josh Kearney was in that beginning band program. Really? And I'm as proud of Josh Kearney as I am any student I've ever taught. Dr. Josh Kearney. And that little 7th grade kid that came bouncing into the band room begging to play trombone. And it was an odd little beginning band. There were always about 20 kids in there, and we only started because the instrumentation was determined by lottery. So we had none of the color instruments. So in that beginning band class, we started bassoons and oboes and horns and trombones and tubas and euphoniums, and anybody who came in and said they wanted to play percussion, it's like, sorry, that's already full, but here, look at this oboe. And because the kids were so smart,
it's pretty much the same.
They were so smart, they were great about it. Of course, we laughed. They could work quantum physics problems the size of the whole side of the building, but they didn't have sense enough to get out of the rain. Some of them, but they were just it was just a whole different culture in that building, and they loved individualism, and I used to tell them all the time, all I wanted to be was like my friends when I was growing up, and I love that y'all respect each other's individual. We had Muslim kids that would go pray at lunch, and coming up on Ramadan, it's a big deal for their culture. It was a big deal in that building, and they loved that about each other. And that was why I wanted to be in that building, because I really felt like those students deserved to have a great band program too. It was never going to be like the McGavock program, but each program has its own identity, and part of the job is learning what those constituents need. And funny aside, that first year we took a busload of students up to New York, and everybody thought I was crazy. What are you doing taking them to New York? You hadn't even, taken them to McDonald's down the street. And I was like, I got this. Don't worry about it. Well, 2 little boys thought it would be cute to hang out the window of the bus going through Times Square. And so when we got to the World Trade Center, I didn't let them go up to the top of it. I made them stay downstairs. And unfortunately, the day the Twin Towers came down, I'll never forget, Trenton Inslee comes into my office and says, well, I guess I'll never get to the top of the World Trade Center. And my first response was, well, I guess you won't ever hang out the window of a bus in Times Square either, will you?
That's right. You mess around, you find out, son. Okay, so then MLK, and then it was time for South Carolina.
Well, speaking of MLK, that's when 9/11 happened, was when I was at MLK. I'll never forget Jojo Apanyanapon's running into our office telling us, that one of the Twin Towers had been hit. And so, do y'all hear that scratching behind me? That's Max digging in his house. Hey, Max, cool it. We'll see how long it lasts. So anyway, about 1 second. Get in there.
Okay.
Max, cool it. Get in there. He has to dig in his crate before he can curl up. I don't know how it makes it different.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so Jojo Appignanopongs comes running into the office and tells Eric Zimmerman, who we had just hired not long after I got to MLK 5 years before this. And Eric and I were a great team. I'd love to talk about the work that we did together. And we can visit the work that Jeff, when I first went to McGavock too. Jeff was the one who trusted me enough to come up here, and I'll never forget that. I'll never be able to repay him because he didn't know me. I had seen the McGavock band at Hattiesburg at the Bands of America Regional and just fell in love with their sound and how beautiful they were. And I had been up here to Contest of Champions and seen Joanne's band and the Franklin band, and some of these bands were just like nothing I'd ever heard, including at Grand Nationals. So, I aspired to have a program like that. And it was just time for me to have my own program. So we went to MLK. But then flash forward to 9/11. After that, I think like a lot of people, we were all taking inventory of what's important. And I knew I wanted to keep teaching, and I knew I wanted to be better at my craft. In order to do that, I needed to go back to school and get some more education. So Dr. Moody agreed to take me at South Carolina. I looked at many other places, and this was the best fit for me because they gave me the most podium time and the most, promised a lesson every single week without fail, and got to work with Bill Moody and David O'Shields and Doug Graham and all these great, Cliff Lehman, who studied with Donald Cinta. So it was just great. And it was an extension of education. As part of my fellowship, they let me supervise student teachers and work with the master's candidates, and it was just a great fit. So that's kind of like my third home. South Carolina is now. And so it was not ever to teach at the collegiate level. It was to be, had every intention of going back to MLK. It was a sabbatical. And then that Northern Arizona opportunity presented itself. And it was just really not something I could say no to at the time. As I was finishing up the coursework on the doctorate, and interestingly enough, one of the people who was a dear mentor and a dear friend was Keith Ellis at Belmont. And he was one of the ones who strongly encouraged me to go back to school and continue my education. And he said, I'll help you get through the pitfalls of how to do that. And he discouraged it. He said, you need to stay in South Carolina and finish your dissertation. As a result of me not listening, it took me 3 more years to finish the doctorate, including past the Spanish proficiency. But I'll always be grateful to Keith for his guidance and encouragement of how to get through the roadblocks and hurdles that any terminal degree program, anyone you navigate anywhere is going to have some hurdles. And if you ever decide you want to do a terminal degree, find somebody who's been through that, who will be your Sherpa. And I had great advisors, but you needed somebody who's not connected to the university to help Sherpa you through that process. But Danny Schmidt, who we lost back in the fall, I had met him through Steve Davis from UMKC, and of course we all know him for when he did our All-State and how much we all love. Steve's a Tennessean, so we proudly claim him. And Danny was really good friends with Steve. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Steve turned Danny on to say that you need to call Nola Jones. She needs to go out to Arizona. So Danny called me and said, would you consider coming out here? And I thought about it, and I have a lot of friends who have tried for a long, long time to get into the collegiate world. And if this is just dropping in your lap, this may be a sign that you should consider it from God or the universe or whatever you believe in. I think we get signs. And I had never lived west of the Mississippi. It was an adventure for me. And I thought, well, it's an 11-month commitment, and if I don't like it, I don't have to stay. So I bought a house unseen. I saw pictures of it. But at that time, the real estate market was hot in Flagstaff, and Flagstaff is beautiful. The hottest it ever gets is 80 degrees in the summer for about a week. And so it was just beautiful, and it was a great opportunity, and that's my third home now. All my friends in Arizona who were so kind and open their arms to me and were just such great friends. And my deal with Danny was, if you'll come out here and work real hard, I'll teach you how to be successful in academia and how to navigate that whole process. And so it just became evident that I couldn't live anywhere where I couldn't grow tomatoes and have crepe myrtles and have a little bit of a Southern accent to talk to. And then I got a call from the University of Tennessee at Martin, and it just felt like the right thing to do to come home. I came and did a rehearsal there and spent a day on the campus. And of course, there's just nobody finer than Julie Hill. There's just not anybody. Of course, John Easley was over there, and John and Delana. Delana was the staff accompanist, and she's quite possibly the best musician I've ever worked with in my life. So it felt like coming home to Tennessee, and I was there for 6 years and had gotten tenure and loved it and could have stayed there for a long, long time, but I missed Nashville. And then entered Jay Steele, my dear friend Ken Geezy, who some of you may know. I'd ask you to lift a prayer for him. He's fighting ALS now, and is being very brave. But he's a Bands of America judge and has judged a lot of marching band stuff. And I'm sure many of you have had the good fortune to be with Ken. But he was having dinner with Jay Steele, who was the director of academic affairs for Metro Nashville, and they were starting this new program that Carol Crittenden had put in place with this Country Music Association called Music Makes Us, and in partnership with the Recording Academy and the Music City Music Council and Mayor Carl Dean at the time. And the CMA had made a multi-year commitment to fund music education in Metro Nashville public schools. Kix Brooks stood up in a meeting and said that his sister was a music teacher in Metro Nashville and that they were not being funded properly, and what were the country music artists going to do about it. And sure enough, they started the CMA Fest, and many people don't know, but those artists work for free. Those 4 nights that they're selling out Titan Stadium, if you're wondering about whether to spend the money on a ticket, just know that money's going straight toward music education. And so it was Jay called me and asked me if I would consider coming over to the administrative side of things. And I don't know, y'all, I just saw these teachers who were working so hard to do good work, and they needed help and they needed funding. And we know that Nashville is an urban environment and that these children come from impoverished backgrounds, many of them, and they need different supports than in some places. And the teachers need different support. It's a heavier lift in many ways. So that kind of the exponential value of helping teachers last longer and be more successful. And, my first meeting with them was, I am you. I'm not an administrator. I'm a band director. I'm a music teacher. So how can we be your advocate and help you not have to push a rock up a hill like Sisyphus for eternity by yourselves?
And then Conn-Selmer.
Well, yeah. We had a change in administration in the Metro Nashville Public Schools and in the Music City Music Council, and the CMA was trying to broaden their reach a little bit. And I was starting to wonder if there were some places where I could be a little bit more effective. And I was quite honestly looking. I had done my time. I don't want to say done my time, because that sounds like you served a prison sentence. It's not that at all. It was time for me to start looking toward. Joanne kept telling me, I'd call her at 10 o'clock in the morning from my office when I'd come up for air and say, "What are you doing?" And she'd say, "I'm eating Cheerios and watching Price is Right." And we saw where that got her.
Dun, 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 dun.
That paid off.
$53,000 later. Yeah. So she kept telling me, "You're going to love retirement and you're going to be busier than you've ever been." And I was just scared to death of it. And then Tim Lotzenhauser came to me. He had asked me to do a keynote for him in New Mexico. And I had done some stuff for them through Nashville with the Music Administrator Collaborative that Gary Markham had put together. And so Gary was a huge influence for me all those years. And so Gary helped me a lot when I came to Nashville and was working in administration. And he would say, "Yeah, you need to fight that battle. No, you need to run from that. That's one you can't win and everybody's going to lose." So he was kind of a Sherpa, very much a Sherpa. So anyway, Tim came to me and said, "Would you consider coming to Conn-Selmer?" And I said, "I don't know. What would it be?" And we met at Midwest with Mike Campice, and John Stoner was president of the company at that time. And they had a real commitment to education. And it just became about a broader reach, amplifying the work that we were doing in Nashville on a national stage, at a national level, and the opportunity to reach and impact and support more teachers. And so that was a great opportunity. And I did that through COVID. And then once we were kind of coming out of COVID, it became apparent that it was time for me to not work for anybody else anymore. and fortunately, I need to fire my scheduler.
Yes.
Yeah,
Max.
Max is
He stopped digging in his
right.
crate, get better on the scheduling side. So, I mean, that's the thing about you, Nola, is that like it's interesting to hear you talk about that, and then also about those compass points we mentioned earlier, because you of all people you're constantly reinventing yourself. You're jumping into new things, you're trying new things, but you're still Nola. You still have the same values and priorities. You're just using those priorities for good in different ways in different environments.
Well, I just thank you, David. That means so much coming from you. I'm very touched that you feel that way, and I know you to be a man of truth and integrity. So I don't think you're blowing smoke, but it really means a lot. And
It's
I just
not.
I
That's
just
for
hope when
real.
I'm not here that somebody
Yep.
will keep doing for teachers what was done for me. And as long as I can have tread on my tires and have anything to offer, I want to keep doing it to some extent. Maybe not, 80 hours a week every week. But yeah, it, you know, and I'm just so thankful and so grateful for the friends. And they say you have the family you're born into, and you have your chosen family and the family you make on the way. And the 3 people on this call and many, many others that I've mentioned, I'm reluctant to mention names because you always know there's going to be somebody you leave out. Um, but those relationships and the people that we've worked with, they're that we work with, not speaking of myself in third person, please, but the people
Yeah, I
that we
know.
work with are just, they sustain us, and they keep us honest, keep us between the guardrails, tell us the tough things we don't want to hear sometimes, and keep us on the up and up.
I have to ask this because I feel like I talk about this in every podcast we do here, but what's your message to young teachers?
This is a noble profession, and it's worthwhile. And I'm not a person who's big on bumper sticker platitudes. I don't feel like that's what teachers need right now or ever. But it is a noble profession, and it enhances the quality of people's lives, and we need it in our society. Again, not a big fan of now more than ever, but I think we're at an inflection point in history, and the arts are critical. And you're not, if you measure wealth by money, you're not going to get rich doing this, but you're going to have a safe, healthy, comfortable retirement, and the other remuneration that you receive is priceless. It's
Mm-hmm.
also a calling, and if you can imagine yourself doing something else, you may need to go explore that. Not many people know, because I'm not super proud of it, but I got out of teaching for 5 years and sold real estate. I was trying to save a marriage and thought that was the thing to do because I was working too hard teaching band. Um, and it became real apparent that my life was going to be empty. There was going to be a hole in my soul if I wasn't involved in music education. And I still don't feel like I get to do the music part of it enough. That's just my personal, you know, um, thing that I deal with. But yeah, it's noble, it's worthwhile, and it will make a difference. History's going to look back fondly on teachers, I think, uh, that we were important, and all the inflection points in history. If you look back through the United States, teachers are revered for what they brought to the table during times of crisis, and this is one of those.
Yes.
And the other thing would be, you don't have to do this alone. Don't do it alone. The busiest
Ask for
Yeah, the
help.
busiest, most successful people are the ones who will be the most generous with their time. Daddy taught me that.
That is exactly right.
When I first started teaching, one of the first bands I took to concert festival, we were playing Prelude, Siciliano, and Rondo. That was a Malcolm Arnold transcription that John Painter had done. And I couldn't get that second movement, the Siciliano, to lay right. It just didn't have that lilt that we were trying to get. It just felt stodgy and heavy and not expressive and not peaceful. tranquil, all those things that you want to have. And I called Daddy just in tears, and he said, well, call John. And I went, John who? He said, Painter. And I said, what? He said, call John and get the score and help ask him to talk you through it. And I said, I can't call Mr. Painter. And he said, here's his number. Yes, call him immediate right now. Hang up the phone and call him. So again, I guess I was just naive or stupid or both. Or a blind squirrel finds a nut. And I called his office number, and he answered the phone, and he told me to hold on, and I heard him rattling around, and he came back and he said, okay, I got the score. Let's start at measure 1. And then he proceeded to give me like an hour lesson on the second movement of Prelude, Siciliano, and Rondo. And I hung up the phone thinking, who does that? And then the other part of me is that I found out everybody does that. There's nobody that won't do that for us if we just ask.
That's awesome.
And you have to be fearless.
I never heard that story, Nola.
Really?
No, I have not. It's one you haven't shared.
That's a great story.
Can I tell a story about Joanne?
Is it going to be about how she snap pointed you that during TBA a few years ago?
We've had our ups and downs over the years, but we're sisters. Family does
That's
that.
right. Yeah, that's what you always do.
And our love, our love and concern for each other is unconditional. So it doesn't matter if we bark. We know it's gonna be fine.
You bark and hug each other. Yes. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. So the second day I was the coordinator of music coordinator of music for Metro Nashville Public Schools. 3 of the top brass, the top tier people in Metro schools come walking in my office. And I looked up and thought, oh boy, surely I hadn't already gotten in trouble. They dragged a chair in and sat down and said, can we talk? And I was like, sure. Well, the school board voted to name the Joanne Hood Field at Overton after Joanne Hood, right? And I said, yes. Well, we're going to need to unname that because the football coach's family's not happy about it. And I won't tell you what the first thought that ran through my head was. And I just put my hands on my desk and crossed my hands like you see the newscasters doing when they're trying not to clench a fist or whatever. Put the tips of my fingers together and so I wouldn't give away any body language, trying to think of what I was going to say. And I said, well, we can absolutely, that is one way we could go with this. That is one solution. I feel compelled to ask that we consider the fact that Miss Hood was at John Overton for, was it 32 years, Joanne?
30 years. 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
And with an average of at least 200 students per year, that's 2 parents per child. In some cases, as many as 4 or 6 parents per child, and for 30 years. And that if you look at the number of people who are going to be upset about this decision, we might want to go back and just revisit and be sure we're making the right decision. Yeah, that was my first day on the job, and I thought, oh, I have so stepped in it. But
that's a great story. I did not know that. I didn't know that was like so early on.
Yeah, but they did listen. Now we've yet to get that sign put up, but we're not done with that yet either.
Okay, so this may be a little bit trivial, but it might be kind of fun. All right, your top 3 favorite memories.
The first one was when I took my first band to CPA in Mississippi, and we came off the stage. Back in Mississippi back then, concert performance assessment was at Hines Junior College, and it was always 1,000 degrees. That was always the week that it turned hot in the spring. So you had to warm up across campus and then walk across the campus to the stage, and then perform your concert. And all the music store reps and all the band directors that had brought their bands earlier in the week, it was a tradition. You just come back. And if you see the Facebook posts, you'll see that all the band directors from the junior colleges, community colleges, and people who've been earlier in the week come back to hear the bands. They support each other for that. And I came up, there's a tree right outside the the hall when you came off the stage, and there was a van there where Charlie Saw was making the recordings, all the recordings, and all the band directors and the music store reps would come out of the balcony, and you would know you did well if when you came off the stage they were standing down there by the tree clapping for you, or if it was real quiet. And I came down there and I stepped off the stage and around the corner to the tree, and it was dead silence. My daddy was standing there in front of all those people with just big old tears pouring down his face, and then all his friends just erupted applauding.
Oh, that's awesome. I just got chills.
Yeah. The second was the Macy's parade we took McGavick to. Those kids had done a lot, been a lot of places, and they were very, very proud of themselves, and they just loved that whole day. People were 10 deep on the whole parade route, screaming and clapping and yelling for them. And it was beautiful. They had a beautiful, beautiful day. And then maybe one of the third was at UT Martin when we played the Persichetti Symphony. And I really felt like that was a musical accomplishment that I had not been able to provide for my students. I felt like that was a real turning point for that program and for those students musically. I don't know if any of them remember that or realize what a momentous musical accomplishment that was, but it was a source of pride for me, and I still listen to that recording and feel pretty good about it. It's not the best version of Persichetti ever, but it's the one we were able to do, and it was climbing a mountain for us. And talking about that family that we make along the way, our chosen family, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Jeff Beckman and Eric Zimmerman. Jeff was the one who brought me to Nashville. The lady came out on the beach and told me that I had a long distance phone call, and I thought someone had died. And it was Jeff Beckman asking if I would consider coming up there. I had come up and judged MCI and fell in love with the program and all. Anna Shepard was my guide, and she turned out to be the school board chair of Metro Schools and was a fierce advocate for years and years. And then when I talked with Eric, who we all love, and he's just such an outstanding musician and such a great human being. And then when we had that extra position at MLK, Eric came over and we worked together. So I called him my work husband for like 11 years. And we were great partners. Daddy used to say when I first started teaching, he said, enjoy when you have great work partners, because it's not always that way. And I didn't know what he was talking about because I had been so lucky to have the great work partners. But if you teach long enough, you know that some are just matches made in heaven. And I'm just so grateful for Eric and the time we spent together in the classroom, and for Jeff and having the confidence in me to take a bet on a person from Mississippi and moving them all the way up here. That was a real bet on his part. I'm real grateful that he trusted me and wanted me to come do that work, because it changed the course of my life for sure. I didn't talk about Joanne enough. The fact that when Joanne Hood was one of the reasons I wanted to move to Nashville too, because when I came up here and saw that Overton band, she was a woman who had had this great success, and she'd been president of TMEA. She had her own program. Everybody loved and revered her, scared of her, terrified of her. I don't remember when I first met her. I was probably shaking. I was scared. But we got to be really good friends over the years, and she's been a tremendous source of inspiration and support and trust. When I just don't know what else to do, I can always trust Joanne to tell me the truth and give me her unvarnished opinion. And if I ask her to keep it in confidence, she'll take it to the vault. And people like that are incredibly important in our lives, and it matters. And I think Joanne was a trailblazer in Tennessee, and we should all be grateful for her influence.
You're sweet.
Without question. That's the thing. So many people who do incredible things, they don't think they're incredible while they're doing them. They're just doing their thing. And then looking back over it, the landscape after it's done, then you begin to see, oh, it's like you said, Nola, like when you were listening to Rick and Joanne with the nomination, it's, wow, that was a lot, but in the middle of it, you don't know. You're just doing your thing.
I'm thinking, did I do all that? I didn't, and then you talk about Rick Murphy and all all of his accomplishments and accolades over his career. And then he teaches 30 years in Tennessee and then goes to Mississippi and has this profound impact in that state, and still does things, goes to people's concerts, and is heavily involved between tennis matches of impacting other people.
And cruises.
And cruises.
And cruises, yeah. And he, he didn't spend his career in Mississippi, but they sure will claim him. I guarantee you those people down there.
Yes, they do.
I think they think he's phenomenal, and it's because he's supportive, and he gives more than he gets.
Well, the three of you on here are the most influential folks in my professional life for sure.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. And Nola, congratulations. Thanks for listening to Bandstand. If you have topic suggestions or need to get in touch with us, email us at tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Your input is important to us, and if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss about the past, present, or future of Tennessee bands, please let us know. Again, that email is tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Right now, we're broadcasting on Spotify and YouTube, so please subscribe, review, and rate. Box 5, please. And more importantly, share this podcast with your friends. See you next week.